H.P. Lovecraft was a master of the weird, and his writing embodied horror, science fiction, fantasy, and pulp, making him one of the most prominent writers of his time. It is his work that inspired Source of Madness. Developed by Carey Castles and published by Thunderful Publishing, Source of Madness was released in late September on Steam as an early access title. At its core, the game is a 2D, roguelite side-scroller that draws heavy influence from games like Diablo. And with Halloween around the corner, I thought it would be a great game to review. The world of Source of Madness is dark, it's gothic, and downright disturbing at times. The game is set in the Loamlands, which the developers call a twisted Lovecraftian-inspired world. You play as one of many acolytes that embarks on a quest, a nightmarish odyssey if you will, to kill a bunch of crazy blob-like monsters who have defiled the land. You start off the game as a generalist who is a basic acolyte and set off into the Loamlands to fight some ugly-ass monsters. You start your journey off with 2 rings that allow you to do melee and projectile attacks. The game's inventory system is taken from the Diablo series, and you can see the influence of Diablo throughout the game. The controls for this game are pretty straightforward, but have their issues. You move your character with the left stick, and the right stick is used to aim. You fire your left weapon with the left trigger and your right weapon with the right trigger. The game has a dash button, and the shoulder buttons allow you to activate various charms that can assist you in battle when you need it. You also have a jump button. The game starts you off, however, with just 2 weapons, and it is your job to find better swag during your playthrough. The movement, and especially the combat in this game, feel very floaty. Your character moves at the pace of molasses, and you fire your weapons even slower. There are charms in the game that improve your quickness, but not by much. The game's combat is reminiscent of games like Contra and Castlevania, but it is not as satisfying as those 2 games. You get 2 basic forms of attack for each ring you wear. A basic attack which does less damage and can be executed by clicking the trigger button, and an ultimate attack that you can do by holding the trigger button and unleashing the attack. The ultimate attack does way more damage than the regular attack, but when using certain weapons it kicks you back about a quarter of the screen, and it's super frustrating. I think the developers could improve this function by toning the kickback down. There were many times that I used the attack and either ran into an enemy that was right behind me and died, or fell off a platform onto spikes and died. Super frustrating. Let's talk about the enemies. They are extremely weird looking. Some are just blobs, some can be described as meat mounds, and others have tentacles that hurtle at you when you shoot them off. The game's enemies aren't too difficult, but it seems that the farther you get into the game, different classes of enemies show up, making it more challenging. The thing that frustrated me about this game is that I would beat a larger enemy thinking it was the boss, but nope, it was just a big enemy with no particular significance. I would fight equally big enemies later on in the stage. I'm not sure why the developers featured more than one of these big enemies in each level, but maybe they can make the encounter more meaningful by just featuring one big enemy and ramping up its difficulty. My other gripe with the enemies is that they don't drop anything. All of the loot can be found in chests sprinkled throughout the game, and you can also visit a store where 2 dudes try to price gouge you for some of the best swag in the game. Not fair. I mean, damn, I'm trying to save the world here, which includes you, and you are over here price gouging me? You must be a retro gaming reseller. Anyhow, the game is frustrating because of the combat system, and sometimes you have no idea if a limb or other body part is going to hurtle at you as it makes its way for you, or if the body on the floor is truly dead. The life bars are so small on the enemies that it's sometimes hard to tell. And speaking of super frustrating, this game is a roguelite adventure, and for those of you who don't know what that means, it is a game that changes in its enemies and level design each and every single time you die. That wouldn't necessarily be an issue if the healing in the game were simple, but like most roguelites, it is not, and you will be dying quite a bit. When you die, you can start over again and choose a different character class if you think you can advance further with it. Each time you go out into the lands, you gain blood points by killing monsters. The points can be used to purchase power-ups in the game that give you everything from an extra dash to extra weapons and a life vial that you can use during your playthrough. the latter being absolutely critical if you plan to make it far in the game. If you amass enough blood points, you can unlock the Pyromancer class, which gets a damage boost when using fire-based weapons. As I mentioned earlier, the inventory system is a lot like Diablo, which makes it difficult for you to switch weapons out on the fly. The other thing about the inventory, for example, is that when you change a robe, your character doesn't change to the color of the robe. You have to go into the inventory again to make sure that you have put on the new swag. It would be nice if the developers could incorporate some type of cosmetic change to the characters when they're switching their weapons and gear out. One of the high points of the game are its graphics. The ambiance of the game is straight out of a goth-infused nightmare, and the graphics help to set the tone of the game. The enemy and character animations for this game are pretty smooth as well. When you encounter an enemy with a tentacle, it's pretty neat to see the mechanics of the tentacle swirling around and coming after you. The other high point is its sounds. The sounds complement the graphics for this game and add to the overall production value of Source of Madness. Have a listen. Despite my gripes with the game, I did have fun playing it and will most likely continue playing it through the month of October. This being an early access title, the developers are constantly making improvements to the game. Hopefully they will tighten it up by the time the game launches on the other consoles. And that's going to be it for the Big Retro Show. Thank you very much for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, drop a comment, and leave a like. And until the next one, I will see you on the Big Retro Show.